Hello and welcome to programme 5 of our latest series of Subsbench. We're very pleased that you've been able to join us either on Facebook or YouTube, and you're going to join in with the conversation which I'm going to have with my friend Richard Latham, who once again joins me on the line from his home in Portishead. Nice to see you again, Richard. It's been another strange week, hasn't it? We'll be talking about what's happening or not happening on the football front shortly. We've got our guests today who are Marcus Stewart and Scott Murray, so they're coming up as well. And sadly, we've got two more people to pay tribute to, because there have been at least two more deaths this week. But in sporting terms, Tony Brown, former secretary and I think chief executive of Gloucestershire County Cricket Club, and Keith Valley, of course, who was the very popular and sometimes controversial announcer for Bristol Rovers at Twerton Park. First, Richard, obviously both you and I knew Tony Brown pretty well. What are your thoughts about him as a cricket administrator, but also a very talented sportsman of his own?
Well, first and foremost, he was a great Gloucestershire player. That was where it all came from, and a trophy winner and a trophy-winning captain for Gloucestershire. So, absolute icon of Gloucestershire cricket. You know, tremendous stats if you look back on his career as an all-rounder with Gloucestershire, and a very, very nice bloke. And as well as Secretary of Gloucestershire, he was Secretary of Somerset for a while as well.
That's right, he was, wasn't
he? I dealt with him when he was at Taunton, and so he held administrative posts with both our clubs in this area. Not so long ago, I was having a very happy lunch out with him and with Marina Dolman, believe it or not, because they went to the same school way back, and so we got Tony and Marina together with Graham Russell, journalist colleague of ours. And we had a very pleasant lunch, and Tony was in good form. So I know he was suffering sort of mild or developing dementia as time went on, but his death still came as a shock to me. A very, very nice bloke and a very, very good cricketer. Yeah,
he was always a very decent bloke to deal with. Certainly when I was at Radio Bristol, I really enjoyed his company too. And then Keith Valley, well, what can we say about Keith? Of course, he was the announcer, particularly in the days at Twerton Park. I've been trying to remember if he did a little bit at Eastville, but certainly at Twerton Park. And he was, I suppose, an out-and-out gashead, wasn't he? And of course that's got him into some hot water on at least one occasion, didn't it?
Yeah, like with Buster Philbin in Bristol City the week before, I spoke to a lot of Bristol Rovers players on the death of Keith Valley, and that was the first thing they said. Absolutely loved the club, would do anything for Bristol Rovers. Controversial character, has to be said, and some of his announcements were certainly controversial. We're probably not politically correct to mention the one when Junior Bent went on as a substitute for Bristol City. I was there that night. Maybe we should gloss over that one, but certainly ones like the referees available for pantomime, which he said at the end of one game as the players were going off. The ref's the one in the pink crash helmet when there was a bald referee at Twerton one day. And I was there for the home games, covering Rovers home games in those days at Twerton, and never without a word, Keith, and colourful character is to say the least. And those are the sort of people remember, and like Tony Brown, he'll be missed by a lot of people.
Yeah, sadly, we've lost them both this week, but we're going to now delve into our archive, and we're going to talk to one of the most popular and successful Bristol Rovers strikers of recent years, and they've had quite a lot, haven't they? It's Marcus Stewart, and he was pretty deadly in front of goal wearing the blue and white quarters, wasn't he? But when we spoke to him about 4 years ago now, I think it was, he was particularly fond of the memories he had when he was an apprentice with Bristol Rovers.
We often talk about them now, because I do keep in touch with some of the lads that were apprentices those days. Marcus Brownie and Lee Madison, Paul Chenoweth, not so much Lee Archer these days, but I'm sure he's still around. And we had some great talks about how it used to be. There's some great stories. The coaches were so tough on us, and the jobs we had to do at the time, you think, God, from cleaning the showers out to cleaning people's boots to cleaning the balls to cleaning the dressing rooms out. At the time, it was to initiations that I can't talk about because you just can't. Initiations that for me was the building of our character, and those things the young lads don't really do these days.
Whose boots did you clean, Marcus? Anybody in particular?
I cleaned, I remember cleaning Ian Alexander's boots and Christian McLean, and every Christmas, we used to get some money, off the pros. That you look forward to that, because we were earning something like 26 £26 a week, something like that, 27. I think it got to £31 a week if you were a second year, because they helped out with expenses. So we weren't earning loads of money. We were still living at home. So 20 quid or 30 quid off the lads was great. You know, it's like a week's wages. So that's what you're expecting. Sometimes it was 10, depending on who it was and how well you got on with them, how well you done their boots throughout the year, would depend really on how much money you got.
I think Jerry Francis gave you your first professional contract, wasn't it? Well, that was obviously a red letter day in your career.
Jerry did, yeah. Jerry got me in the office and just said, you know, I've got a contract, and then I think 2 or 3 weeks later he left. So a new season, new start. I think it was it Martin Dobson? Was it Martin Dobson?
Yeah.
He came in and gave my debut. So yeah, changed. And that was the start, really, of what would happen throughout my career. Managers coming and going, and which is, as we all know, is part of football. But that was the first time that happened to me.
I guess your best times were under John Ward when they here, and the season got to the playoff final. You had a good season that season, a lot of goals, and then the following season, 30 goals, wasn't it? So tell us about those times. What was special about those times?
Those times were really good because we had a lot of homegrown players who were in the team at the time, or around the club. So it was Bristol Rovers, but I had a good feel about it. Everyone kind of got on with each other because we known each other, and the lads that came in, the likes of Andy Tilson, Gary Waddock, Paul Miller, Justin Channing, were a really good group of older lads that kind of looked after us really, and we had a really good relationship with them. So we had a good relationship with players that we've been brought up with, and we had a good relationship with other players that have been brought from all over the country. And that was really paramount for me on how things worked on the pitch.
And I read somewhere, Marcus, that John's assistant, Dennis Booth, did a lot of work with you. Was he instrumental in you really blossoming as a player?
Dennis would pull me to the side, Dennis would have chats, Dennis would do extra little bits with me, yeah, of course. But it wasn't the fact that he was just a good bloke to talk to, really, and that's what I liked about him. He didn't have any ego about him. No one had an ego about them. Don't get me wrong, everyone demanded each other in training and stuff like that, but there was no real big time Charlies in there in terms of, you know, I'm better than you guys. That wasn't the case, and that didn't happen at the training ground. So if that was the case, then one or two of the lads would jump on top of them.
I don't want to butter you up, but of all the Rovers strikers, and they've had many good ones over the years, I thought at that period you were the best that I'd seen. And your great trademark was getting away from defenders, wasn't it? You were quick off the mark, you sort of read things quickly. Did that come naturally to you? Was that always there?
You know, coaches are around to tell you things, give you advice, and do things with you. It's up to the player to listen to those kind of bits of advice or do what you're asked to do, whether it's on the pitch, on the training pitch. I was fortunate that if someone told me something, I could process it straight away in terms of related to football, to the game, without having to show me, and I could do it. It might take me a bit of a while, but I'd always get around to do it, and I always thought about things that would suit my game and how I worked. So I worked out myself, but I was given the advice, and off the back of the advice I worked out. I didn't just work out with no one telling me and no one showing me. It's all about listening, and I listened to things that I think would suit me.
So they can't put pace there, can they? And you had pace.
I didn't have pace, really. I was quick over probably 5 yards, 10 yards, but I was really, really fit. I could run all day. That was my real strength. And I was a good thinker. I could think about the game, and I could put into from training or advice. I could put it into a game and do it. So I think what you have to do as a young player is try and figure out what type of game is going to get you a career for the rest of your life. You know, whether it's a striker who's going to be a striker who runs over the top and just plays on the shoulder the whole time, doesn't get involved in the build-up play, but that's what you do, like Jamie Curtin does. He's the best. What's the word I'm looking for? He's the one I'm looking at who can do that. He's made a career out of just playing on people's shoulders and trying to get on the goal and being a good finisher. Don't get me wrong, he can finish, but that's his career. He doesn't get involved in anything else because he knows that's what he's done. He's done that since he was 18, and that's got him a career and has got him almost 300 goals. So it's like, you know, if he wants to be the big man and wants to be a target man and play up against people and be the one who knocks down headers, that's not going to happen for him. No. So you have to look at your attributes you've got, whether it's pace, height, strength, and you have to play to those things. And Jamie is the one who can do that. I realised what attributes I had, and I played to those, and that's what made me a career.
Were you particularly ambitious as a player because eventually you moved on to Sunderland? Was that because you didn't think you could do what you needed to do at Rovers?
At the time, I think Ian Holloway was coming in, and I just felt it was time to move out of Bristol. You know, Bristol. I see lads from Bristol stay in Bristol all the time, want to be around Bristol all the time, Bristol lads, and unfortunately that's not all I do. I want to be a small fish in a big pond, not a big fish in a small pond in terms of football. So I want to get out. I want to see what was around. I want to see what the country was like. I want to see what other clubs were like. And I wanted to play in the Premier League, and I wanted to play for England. I had all those ambitions, no doubt about that. And you know, as much as I'm Bristolian, I'm not going to play for England. I'm playing for Bristol Rovers at that time. Wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to play in the Premier League playing for Bristol Rovers at that time. I was 23, I think, when I left, 22. So I realised I've got to go. I wanted to move to see different parts of the country as well, to be honest with you.
Would that have happened if you'd won that playoff final? Because you'd scored in the playoff final against Huddersfield, hadn't you? And you I think you hit the crossbar, didn't you? In the very, very late on, it was that close to being a real big day for
before,
Rovers,
wasn't it?
Yeah, the year before, because you went to Huddersfield after that, didn't you?
No, I went to Huddersfield a season after that.
Yes, that's what I mean.
So another season at Rovers, and then I went.
But if you'd won that, if it had been the other way round, you'd have been in the bigger, higher division than Huddersfield.
Yes, so I probably would have stayed. Yeah. But that's the way football is.
Marcus Stewart there, one of the most popular strikers, and who knows what might have happened if he'd stayed on, but the rest is history, as they say.
The history of Bristol football at both clubs, I'm afraid, the good players get away, don't stay as long as they should have. And of course, Rovers, so many strikers over the years. You know, you can reel them off, can't you? You know, the likes of Jason Roberts, Nathan Ellington, Barry Hales, Jamie Curriton. You can just go on and on. And to me, Marcus was the best of all of them. When he was in his pomp, I think he scored 30 goals in a season for Rovers. So difficult to mark, elusive runner, just intelligent footballer. And whenever anybody asks me who I think the best of all of them was, I think at his best it was Marcus Stewart.
Yeah. Okay, coming up in just a moment, we'll be talking to Scott the Kitman Murray, and that's coming up for all you Bristol City supporters. But first, Richard, what on earth's going on with the Football League? We know the Premier League's going to definitely restart, but the Football League can't really decide whether they want to restart, what they're going to do. I'm at a loss to know what to expect next.
No, I think the latest we've been told now is that there's a meeting on June the 8th involving Championship, Division 1 and Division 2 clubs, and there may be something concrete come out of that. But what's it starting to look like to me is that no one wants to make a decision. You know, who's going to take responsibility and say this is actually what we're going to do? You know, things are happening now in other sports. Take cricket, for example. You know, there are now plans to hold a test match behind closed doors against West Indies, and we've got a date for that in July. Okay, it's still got to be government approved, but it's at least they've taken the steps to plan something. This just drifts on. Will the AFL season finish? Will it not? Will it finish in League 2? Will it continue in League 1 and the Championship? You know, and you just think, is there anybody who's actually going to say at the end of all this, you know, right, you know, this is what we're going to do? Because at the moment, it doesn't look like happening.
No, and if they were to go ahead, even if the Championship were to go ahead, the way it's going, they're going to be out of step with the Premier League, aren't they? I mentioned this last week, and you could have them finishing several weeks after the Premier League, and then what happens when you want to restart the next season? It's a total mess, isn't it?
But this is what authorities are for, aren't they? In every sport, you know, you look to the authorities for leadership and responsibility for taking decisions. I spoke to one EFL manager quite recently, and he was getting very frustrated and saying, you know, who in the end is going to take the decision for us? Do we have to say what we? Obviously, they're going to take into consideration the opinions of the clubs, but who's actually going to say, right, now this is what we're going to do? Yeah. And it smacks to me as there's no one ready to do that at the moment.
No. Maybe they should have somebody like Scott Murray in charge. He'd make a decision, wouldn't he? We had the privilege of being taken by Scott into the dressing rooms at Ashton Gate just over about a year ago, I think, to chat about his career. Now, today we're going to focus on the early part of his career. And Richard, I know you love this story as well. How we discovered that he might have ended up as a Liverpool player.
But for a certain Brian Tinian.
Absolutely, yes.
I'd been called down on trial for a couple of times at Liverpool. I think the first week went very well, and actually I'd met, I don't even remember, Scott Patterson, who actually when I came to Bristol City, he was at Liverpool at the time as well. I went back, so the second time they've invited me back for an actual game at Anfield. I think so it was me, my dad, my brother, big Ron Yates, Liverpool legend, met us off the plane, took us to Anfield, played against Leicester. at Anfield, and we won 1-0, and I scored the goal in front of the Kop. Obviously, there was no one there. I still celebrated. I still celebrate because Liverpool's probably my Premier League team. So I was on cloud nine. I think spoke to Graham Souness after the game, come in and see me, and it seemed like everything was going to plan. So I think I went back on that flight, couldn't sleep, went to work, so excited, waiting for the phone call, and then I think it was a week or a few weeks later, Bristol City knocked him out of the FA Cup. I think some Geordie lad with not a bad left foot had scored past Bruce Grobler. To this day I still think Bruce took a bung. But I think Tins obviously scored the goal, and it cost me a move to Liverpool because Graham Souness ended up getting the sack.
And was there no follow-up from Liverpool after that?
Nothing at all, never heard a thing, no. So I think I was lucky enough to be Tins' best man at his wedding a few years ago, and that got mentioned
a few times.
So I did get, so he probably still owes me a few quid. I think I made sure that night that he couldn't stand up. I spiked a few of his drinks with some extra alcohol, so I think I got my own back. But as I said, Tins cost me a move to Liverpool.
So you ended up joining Aston Villa, so coming down from Scotland, where you played Highland League football.
Highland League, played at Fraserburgh.
Yeah.
And even the Aston Villa story is, I played against Elgin City on the Saturday, and their manager, John Teasdale, he was good mates with the Villa assistant manager. He's drove me and another Fraserburgh player down to Villa Park for a week, come back for the second week again, and I scored the quickest ever hat-trick in non-league. I think it was the first 12 minutes at Villa Park, so I think Tins wasn't there, so it was handy. So as I said, I've ended up getting the move to Villa. I think Ron Atkinson was the manager. He's in his office after the game, and I actually went back and worked for a week. So I've signed for Villa. I went back to work at the fish factory for a week because they'd give me so much time off. Went back to work for a week. Then the second week, I was getting everything ready to move to Birmingham, which was a bit scary.
I was going to mention you worked in a fish market. That's why we're not sat much closer to you than we are.
I don't blame you.
It does tend to have a lasting effect. But you had a little time at Aston Villa. And then it was halfway through the season, 97-98 season, memorable one for Bristol City fans. Tell us about how you came to come down here.
What happened? I think I just played a reserve game at Villa Park, and Deadly Doug, bless his soul, Doug Ellis, is who I got on really well with. He was brilliant, and I think after the Resi game, Big Deadly's just more or less coming in and said, "Scotty, we've sold you." I was actually shaking, and as I said, then found out it was Bristol City, and by this time I only knew where Aberdeen was in Birmingham. So as soon as I found out it was Bristol, the first thing I said, whereabouts that? They said south. I went further south again. So I've actually driven down with my agent at the time, and come to Ashton Gate. Obviously it's a lot different now, but I've looked at the stadium and I was like, oh sheesh. Obviously we were second in the league at the time. I think Watford and ourselves were fighting all the whole season. I think the crowds were 19,000, so I think it'd gone from me playing reserve team football at the Bescott in front of John Ward and a few other people to signing for Bristol City. So I was delighted, obviously. And
to have promotion so quickly after, I know you were in and out of the team for the rest of that season, but it all ended so wonderfully happily, didn't it? I mean, that must have been a really pleasant time in your career.
It was good because John Ward sold the club to me straight away. He said I'd play on the Saturday, and I was sub, so I started.
You never touched him.
Yeah, there you go, John Ward, brilliant. Now, you know what? One of the nicest blokes. I always remember one of the games we played here. I think we might have gone through a sticky patch, I think, and he's actually went into the crowd. And he was just going around shaking people's hands. He was. Do you know what a gentleman he was? And as that season was different class. I think to get promoted, and as I said, it was brilliant.
So were you always a right winger when you played?
No. So when I was at Fraserburgh, I was a striker. I started off at Villa as a striker, and then I think Big Ron left. I got the sack, and then Brian Little came in. First thing he did was played 3 centre halves. He put me as a wing back because I was quick and I had plenty of energy. So I think it's called the graveyard shift. There's nothing worse than a wing back. You're literally running up and down the whole game. might get 5 or 6 touches of the ball. But no, as I said, I really enjoyed it. I like working hard and I like running. So.
And it hasn't stopped you scoring goals during your career either, has it?
As I said, I think starting off as a striker probably helped me more than anything. And as I said, I probably missed too many chances to be a proper striker. I think, as I said, so then that's why they've chucked me wide out the way, I think.
So what's your best speed for 100 metres then?
I don't know, I used to do it in, I think it was around about 11 and a
Really?
half seconds,
Wow.
yeah. For a small, skinny lad, it was not bad. I think Sprowley's probably Ivan Sproul, I remember watching him run and I was like that, gee, honestly, I've never seen anyone as quick in my life, but I think it's usually around about 11 and a half seconds, so it was all right.
So let's briefly talk about that promotion then, and the team, and Terry Connor was a big part of it, as well as John Ward as the coach, who now of course is with Ireland and next to Mick McCarthy at the international games. A good coach, Terry.
Brilliant. You know what, in TC, I think I've been lucky to play against a few of his teams. He's Ipswich as well, I think he'd been down there, and as I said, he's a lovely bloke, and I think if you had any trouble or anything, you go straight to TC, and as it is, his coaching ability is second to none, and that's why he's done extremely well in his career.
And the players that you joined, what do you remember of that team?
Colin Cram, he was my head case. I think I try to stay away from him as much as possible, and now 20 years later we're still about, isn't he? So I think Sean Gore, obviously, he used to bang the goals in. I think obviously Lewis Carey, Tommy Dog, Matty Hewlett. It was a big Bristol connection, local lads in the team. It was different class, and as I said, we were all best mates, and I think what used to sum it up for us, I think it was the days used to change at the stadium, so we changed down in the old home dressing room, and after training you don't get all the fancy food, and I think we used to go up to Denny's on North Street, everyone would get a sandwich, a packet of crisps, can of juice or whatever. We'd sit in the dressing room, told our partners that we were doing double sessions, we were actually in the dressing room just chatting. That's when we were all like best mates.
And then the bombshell came in October, the following October, and suddenly everything changed.
It did, I think. Obviously, I think we played Bolton on a Friday night. I think we beat Bolton, and then I think in the following Monday, I think the gaffer John Ward, I just remember him walking out on the training pitch, and it was like he was carrying the world on his shoulders. And then we obviously found out. Obviously, Benny Lennartson had come in, so I think it was a bit of a shock to everybody. I think Scott Davidson's obviously thought he'd gone a different direction, which, do you know what, as an owner, you're entitled to make any decision you want. And it just backfired for us in the end. I think Benny probably, I think he didn't speak much English, a bit like myself. I think so. I think it was hard for him to get his ideas across, and as I said, yeah, I think he's went on to have a very good career, I think, himself anyway. So I think it was disappointing for us all, because we were all like a big family, and it's been torn apart.
It just seemed like an odd time to make that change, didn't it, really?
I think, yeah, and I think, as I said, we've just beaten Bolton live on Sky. I think we beat them 2-1, and as I said, everyone's happy because it's lifted us up the table a little bit, and then obviously the bombshell the following week, which was a bit disappointing.
A lot of money had been spent in the summer, hadn't it? That was the thing, and I think they were expecting instant reward for that. Akinbaye had come in, Annie Tony Thorpe came Soren Anderson, and I think it was more money than Bristol City had ever spent before by a mile, and perhaps the directors then were thinking we should be doing better than we are.
I think so. I think you see it now. I think you see Fulham, for example, last season spent 100 million. It's hard, and I think.
But it breaks up the team that's done so well for you, doesn't it?
And I think you've got to keep the majority of the lads in there, I think, and let them have their chance. And you know what? If they're not good enough come Christmas, then so be it. But I think Scott Davidson probably thought that, as I said, we should have probably been higher up the league than we were. But it's a big step up. I think any division, you come from League 2 to League 1's a big step up. League 1, the Championship, massive, and then the Championship, the Premier League's probably even bigger. So I think it was disappointing, but you know what? But as players, you just got to get on with it, I think, more than anything.
Scott Murray there, and of course Benny Lennartson was the manager at that time, as we leave the Scott Murray story. Before his second spell back at the club, of course. Benny Lennartson, I saw you chuckle or smirk, was it there, Richard? That was a terrible appointment, wasn't it?
It certainly was, and it was even worse that John Ward left, having put together a promotion team the previous season, and was looking like progressing. When John left the club, I think they were at 14th in the Championship. No great pressure on. They're in good form, just beating Bolton Wanderers at home 2-1, which was on Sky. And I remember going away that weekend and thinking, John's safe now for the time being. And by the following Tuesday, he'd left, and Benny Lennart's appointment had already been made behind the scenes. That's really what the truth of it was. And Benny was a good coach, I think, but had the language problems right from the start. And players claimed they couldn't understand what he wanted. And results just right. I mean, the first two results, 6-1 and 5-0 or whatever it was. It was around this. I think 6-1 at home after they took the lead was one of them, and I think it was 5-0 away. And from a team that was progressing, suddenly to drop like a stone like that. And of course, they never recovered, and relegation bottom place followed. So, not one of the best decisions in Bristol City's history.
I'll always remember Benny Lennartson's first game because I had a rare day off and I was assembling some bunk beds at home, and it didn't make it any easier as the goals went in. Surely not. And oh dear, that screw doesn't go there after all. So I blame Benny Lennartson for my poor DIY on that occasion.
Well, I think he's most remembered for Bristol City fans, or certainly by me, for throwing his cap into the crowd whenever City scored, and he didn't lose many caps. I can tell you that, because they didn't score that many times. It was, and I say nothing against Benny, because he was a nice bloke. He just sort of seemed to be like a fish out of water in coming into the situation of Bristol City. Around the world, I think regarded as a very, very good coach. But you don't want to give him players excuses for not doing well, and the excuse was that they couldn't understand what he was getting at.
Yeah. He lived to talk another day, and he went on to a fairly successful career afterwards. So anyway, I'm sure he doesn't really want to remember the City days either. So that's it for another programme. Richard, what you got planned for the coming week?
A bit more of the same, I think. What can you do? Get out and garden. The garden's looking better than it has done for a few years. Wife's got a few jobs lined up around the house. I think if you talk to any husbands around the country, that's probably how they've been for the last few weeks. And just make the best of it. I mean, I'm very much a believer in that. I believe in sticking to the guidelines. I don't like any thought of going out and abusing the guidelines in any way. And I've certainly not done that. And I know there are people who tell me they've been out, they see people in groups and all this. I know the restrictions are being slightly relaxed. But let's not have another wave of this thing, and there is every possibility that we will get another wave of it. And if we want to really support the NHS, which we do, then everyone's got to keep to the restrictions, whatever the government say you've got to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll go along with that. So we'll be back for another programme next week. If you'd like to get in touch, the email address is on the screen. You can follow us on Twitter or on Facebook or YouTube, of course. And we look forward to you joining us for another Subsbench same time next week. And I'll see you in 7 days' time, Richard.
Yeah, see you then.
Cheerio.